folks. My name is Jim Worthen. The show is Worthen One-on-One. We're here on Channel 17 every Monday at 2, Wednesday at 5, Friday at 7. But we have two platforms that you can share the show around the whole country and world. In fact, this guy one time, the guy I'm going to introduce one time, I called him and he was in Paris and he was watching the show. And so when I say around the world, people do pick it up. One platform is TV Santa Barbara website, and then you go to the demand button all the way to the bottom to Worthen One-on-One. Or you go to YouTube and search Worthen One-on-One and we're there. That way you can share the exciting shows, and today's is really great with your friends anywhere in the county of Santa Barbara, the state of California. It is California still, Newsom hasn't run it. Anyway, and all the way to Timbuktu, which I understand is somewhere in Africa, I think. Anyway, my guest today is going to be talking about his two shows, new seasons. One is Animal Zone, the other is a food show. I don't watch it because I'd gain weight, but they both broke in the last week, and we're going to get to a real preview before a lot of people see them. Arthur von Wiesenberger, how are you doing?
I am excellent, Jim. Good to be back here and good to be talking about TVSB, which is where all these shows sort of have been a home, and some of them started here, which is amazing. I mean, Worthen One-on-One started here, right?
Sure did.
And now you're global.
Yes.
As long as you're on the internet,
yeah.
Right? Same with us.
Yeah. Does that mean my house is going to be raided for my documents?
Well, I don't know. I hope not. But we're having great success with Animal Zone,
right?
And maybe that's what we want to start with.
I think we're going to have a clip of Animal Zone's
our new opening.
New opening, yes.
Yeah.
Well, that's the intro.
Right.
This is season 8.
That's right. Our season 8. It's we started in 2018, and we're now in our 4th year. And season 8. Every season we try and change and expand a little bit what we're doing. And this season we really got inspired by a local organization called the Santa Barbara Wildlife Care Network. Ariana, who runs it, would come.
You have a few friends who are supporters and
yeah.
help build it.
It's a wonderful organization, and what they do is they primarily go out and rescue wildlife that's been injured or maybe separated from their pack or whatever, and they rehabilitate them and then they release them back into the wild.
Yeah, they had a big project while I think you were not in this area, you were vacationing. The brown pelicans were very sick. I would see them at Goleta Slough when I went down there to meditate, and I wondered why they were so standing across the lagoon and just didn't look right. And then I read in the Santa Barbara News Press that it was a serious problem.
Right. And wildlife care came to the rescue and helped them and nurtured them back to health, and then we released them, which is it's great. Anyway, the whole idea that, I mean, we started out as a show about pets, dogs and cats,
Right.
because we knew that's
Humane Society.
that was our audience primarily.
Adoption.
With people who had animals and wanted to rescue an animal, whatever. We wanted to talk about that and also acknowledge the wonderful people that work in that world. And then as we kept going, we started expanding a little bit more. We went into the barnyard world. So we started talking about horses, and we started talking about chickens and cows and pigs, and that element of animals.
And also people didn't realize, or I'm sure a lot of people didn't realize, that all those are involved in adoption and care.
Absolutely, and that's a whole nother world. And then because of the Wildlife Care Network and working with them on filming some of their releases, because we would follow them, they would release snakes, or they would release birds, or they would release rabbits. They had all kinds of different wildlife that they were releasing back into nature, and we would film that and include that in an episode. We were finding that people really liked to see that too and know more about wildlife. So when we went to Florida for this season 8, we really got into the wildlife in Florida and talked with experts who are involved solely with rescuing wildlife and rehabilitating them if they're injured. Like
Alligators?
not so much the alligators, although that's probably another story, but manatees. There's a lot of manatees that get injured mostly from boating accidents. Boats run over them because they're in the waterways, and they get
They're
injured.
pretty big too.
Oh, they're huge, but they're move slow and they're very very docile. But because they get injured, they need to be given medications to heal the wounds and nurture them back to health, and then they re-release them. So we went to Tampa to visit one of those organizations that do that. We found that there's an organization in the middle of Florida, right in the middle of nowhere, Florida. I mean, you drive from the East Coast all the way to the West Coast, but somewhere in between those 2 points, in the very flat, very hot area, there's a little jungle encampment that's run by the Lemur Conservation Group.
South of Orlando?
It would be south of Orlando, yeah.
Above the Everglades.
Yeah, and in this area, they have a place where they are breeding lemurs and protecting them that originally came from Madagascar, where their habitats are being ruined, and lemurs are dangerously endangered. So they're bringing them back. So they're like a little monkey.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they're the cutest little guys, and unfortunately, they need space to breed. They need to be protected from predators, and so this group has been doing that, and I think they have now 60 some odd lemurs in their group, and they're placing them in areas where they can be looked after and cared for, and the hope is to bring back the population, especially some of the rarer breeds. But when we went out to film them, this one little lemur came over to the tripod, to the camera crew, and he starts rubbing his rear end on the tripod. And I said to the guy, what's all this?
Please.
And he goes, no, he likes the tripod. He's marking the tripod as his. And needless to say, we knew had a new crew member for the crew. But they're wonderful animals, really interesting creatures. First time I ever saw a lemur was in Africa, and I was in the Comoro Islands with William Holden's son, Scott Holden. And we were shooting a film called Comoro, all about the Comoros, or the only other place where lemurs are wild. And these lemurs would come in, even into our little encampment, looking for bananas. And once you gave a lemur a banana, you had a friend for life. So sweet, though. Really, really cute little animals. But anyway, so we started getting into more of all this wildlife. For example, we met a woman named Liz Daniels, who is a rescuer, has WD Farms that rescues wildlife. And one of the things she specializes in is owls. And
Now, where is she?
She's also in Orlando area.
Okay.
And there was a little baby owl that had been thrown out of its nest by its siblings. Owls are not nice to their siblings. The weaker ones generally bite the dust. But she rescued this little baby owl and nursed the owl back to health and and bonded with the owl. And that's one of the things with wildlife is if you have them from infancy, you pretty much can't re-release them into nature. They're kind of dependent upon you.
Your treats.
Yeah.
Traits.
So this little owl travels with her wherever she goes to talk about wildlife in Florida, and it's on her shoulder like a parrot would be. Sweetest little owl. And she came we were filming in this hotel in Orlando, and she came in with this owl, and the owl was sitting on her shoulder, and then the owl took a little trip around the room, looking at all the different things, landing on a few places, and finally came and rested on my head, and just sat on my head, and I went, well, there we go.
Did you have a hat on? Or
No. I had a full head of hair back then, and that's all gone. But no, it was really a sweet little owl, and a screech owl.
So in the 4 years and 2 seasons each year, in the 8 seasons, you've expanded from just being on local Santa Barbara to being across the country on, how is it broadcast everywhere in the country?
Well, so we started on TVSB in Santa Barbara.
Yeah,
and
I've heard of them.
And we were on both Channel 17 and 71, different times of the week. And then we started to expand onto Cox Cable. And they have a station here, which is Channel 4 on their cable, or 1004 if you have the high-end box. And they just aired us within California. So we were everything from Santa Barbara County down to San Diego, except for parts of LA. That went on for a while, and it was getting some good response. So we decided to expand, and they took us into Arizona, Nevada, and then Louisiana, which are different markets for them, but the show did really well there, and actually Nevada became one of our leading show audiences, and we actually filmed in Las Vegas.
Yeah, you did several shows in season 6 and 7.
Right, very good memory.
Well, who's your biggest fan?
Are you? Okay. Do you want an autograph? On a check. So we went on from Nevada, and then we started going into other states, finally making our way to the East Coast, Cincinnati, Ohio, Virginia, and we found that we were getting really almost not a nationwide, as in we were out of some of the major cities. We weren't like in Chicago, we weren't like in New York, but we were in all the other outlying areas.
Large regional.
Yeah. And that became our national network. And then of course we're on the internet, so that's a global network. And I'm not sure what we'll.
How do you? 2 questions.
Yes.
How do people find out when your shows are, and is that the internet, and how do they find you on the internet?
The easiest way to find out about Animal Zone is you just go to animalzone.org. All one word, animalzone.org, and you can see where to watch the show when it airs on TV, or you can watch the shows right there on the internet. And it has all the stories about what each episode is. And that's kind of where we do it. What we're finding though about wildlife is that's a huge topic, and Florida has lots of wildlife, not just at Mar-a-Lago.
You beat me to it.
Sorry. But in going across the country, and we're trying to focus in on each of these different areas so that people can learn about each other. I mean, Las Vegas is completely different from Florida, which is completely different from California. So we're sort of focusing in on each area to show the different approaches to animal welfare and animal education. And we're hoping that the show will eventually get onto some streaming platforms, because I think that's where we're going to go. We have an agency now that's representing Animal Zone, and that's really good.
So has Governor DeSantis called and said he wanted to be on with his pet yet?
What kind of pet does he have? Is it
I
elephant?
have no idea.
He probably has got to have an elephant, no? Not a donkey.
Yeah, not a donkey.
Not a donkey. We're hoping that we get more and more notable people involved, because celebrities, politicians, leaders in all kinds of different areas, they're ambassadors if they're animal lovers. And we want to really applaud them and show that this personality is more than just a pretty face on TV. This person, like when we had Christopher Lloyd on the show, or Jimmy Connors, or Peter Noon or Mireille. When we have well-known people on the show, that's good because it shows to the public that adoptable animals are a good thing. And everybody, I mean, you know, some people can go and spend $8,000 to buy a puppy, or you can go down to your normal shelter and rescue a puppy or rescue a dog that really needs a home. And so we really try and emphasize, you know, that type of attitude.
Yeah, I probably halfway through so it'd be season 4. So I want to tell you some stories about pets that we rescued and pets I had. And it turned out that my stories, you said, Jim, we want it to be all upbeat. I said, well, but we saved this animal. Yeah, but we want to tell the happy ending, not.
Yeah, because there are sad ones,
yeah,
of course.
Very sad.
And in every
and you still rescue them, but you didn't want to bring the people down with the bad part before we got to curing the good part.
Well, our real goal is to applaud people who are involved in the animal welfare, you know, and that's the shelters, that's the sanctuaries, there's organizations and individuals across the country. They're doing just great things for animals, and those are our stars. Those are the people we want to highlight, and we also want to highlight the educators, people who know a lot about animals, because every single animal has a whole deep history and story behind them, and you start learning about what they're capable of. We really underestimate animals. I'm reading a book right now which is all about animals' different senses, sense of smell, sense of vision. You know, rattlesnakes can perceive things on the ultraviolet scale, and heat. I mean, things that we don't even think about, but which is part of their survival techniques. And so I think the more we can bring out that information, the better the show is, because it helps people understand animals and appreciate them, because animals are amazing.
Yeah, I had a shock where I live. You've been there. It's sort of like the Garden of Eden between my cottage and the main house. And last Thursday, I think I stepped onto my step to go inside, and I looked down, and here's a snake. And I thought, well, there's no rattles on the tail. And I looked, and literally, it was a 6 to 8 foot long garter snake. I've never seen one that large.
Was it garter or gopher?
I don't know the difference.
Well, the gophers are more common around here, and boy, they are beautiful because they really.
It was a beautiful snake, but it was long.
They do a great job of taking care of the gopher population. So I always, admire. Whenever I see a gopher snake, I give her a little wink, say thank you.
Yeah.
Helping.
Remember, we want to be upscaled. Gophers can be loved too.
Yes. But I'd love to have them over at your house instead of mine.
For sure. So I've noticed as you've progressed, the first, besides Santa Barbara, Southern California, up to Monterey, and we want you to tell some of those stories. But then next, in my recollection, was the high desert and inland empire, then Las Vegas. Is that the progression that the show kind of went? Yeah,
we're kind of moving our way east and south, slowly but surely. And we're also trying to capture different aspects in each of those regions. It's very different. Like in Las Vegas, we covered they were in the middle of a pandemic. And people in Las Vegas, when they couldn't have gamblers coming to town, everybody was being laid off. All those big hotels were empty. And a lot of people, when they're living hand to mouth anyway, suddenly they were, just trying to get by, and they had pets. And the last thing you want to have happen when someone has a pet but they're running out of money is have them relinquish that pet. You want to do everything you can to keep that pet at home, for the pet's sake and also for the family's sake, because the pet is a family member.
The answer?
Well, the answer was there was an organization in Las Vegas that specializes in helping families who are in that predicament, and they give free food for your animal, medications for your animal, all kinds of support that animals need, and we went and documented this lineup of cars that would come to their distribution center and get whatever they were being given. They tell them what kind of animals they have: dog, cat, whatever, how many, and they were getting this to be able to keep the animal at home.
And is that the
It's
same,
called Hearts Alive Village.
Is that the same group that funded a lot of it through a what we'd call a thrift store?
Hearts Alive Village actually is funded mostly through contributors to the organization. I mean, they've got some good
Isn't
sponsors.
there a thrift store also?
Not with Hearts Alive.
No, in
There
Las
is
Vegas.
one, yeah, and we went to visit them as well, and they specialize in just mostly medical problems, veterinarian care for dogs. But Hearts Alive started as an idea by this woman's daughter, as a school project and a dream. Her dream was to be able to help animals, and the mother decided that they've been in the printing business. They said, "I'm going to get involved and help you make this dream come true," and they did. And they actually put all their energy, all their efforts, and whatever resources they had into building this nonprofit, which is now very significant in Las Vegas. I mean, it's terrific what they're doing. There was one episode, I think you may have seen it, where they had rescued this dog from a shelter, and the dog had been chipped, and they found through the chip where the dog's owner was from. The dog's owner was in Minnesota, and they got in touch with the dog's owner and said, "We have your dog here
In Las Vegas.
in Las Vegas." And he goes, "Oh my gosh, I'm so happy that you found him." He had been in Las Vegas 2 years earlier visiting his mother who lived there, and the dog was in the backyard and escaped out of the backyard and disappeared, and he couldn't find the dog. And after days and days of searching,
Had to
gave
go
up.
home.
Gave up, had to go back. And so they were able to find the owner thanks to the chipping. They not only found the owner, but then they found someone who was willing to drive the dog cross country back to Minnesota to the owner.
So you recommend chipping
Oh, without a doubt.
for children too?
I think for you. I think anyone who can get lost, we want to chip them. But no, it was just a great thing to see, and that's the kind of thing we want to bring out, because otherwise it'll happen, but we don't hear about it. But by being able to profile it, it helps inspire other organizations to do this kind of work.
And maybe other people to check the chipping.
Oh
and
yeah,
see.
absolutely, and it's so easy to do. I mean, it's so easy to get an animal chipped. You can usually go to your local shelter and get an animal chipped. If you have a dog or a cat.
What does it cost?
Some cases it's no charge. Some cases it might be as much as $25. But once you get the chip in there, then everything is recorded: your name, address, phone number, all contact stuff like that. So if the dog ever gets lost, or the cat, they know where to find you.
Well, our story is Petey ran away one time. We lived up on APS, our rescue dog, and we drove up and down the street because it was evening till 9 in the morning with the windows rolled down, yelling, "Petey, Petey!" Never found him. And then that was a Saturday night. On Monday, he was at the Humane Society in Goleta.
Wow, isn't that amazing?
So so it all mixes together.
Right.
Now, we talked about celebrities. I was taken by a beautiful woman, she has a nice husband, who was doing things with pugs up in Monterey.
Yeah, a couple of seasons ago. That was Dina Eastwood, who was Clint's, one of his wives, not the most current one, but she was a very charming woman, a great personality, and loves pugs. And she came on the show with her pugs and explained how they are really an alien life force. She doesn't believe they're part of the canine world or of their own world. But she absolutely she rescues all kinds of animals, but that was one of her focuses. And she writes regularly for a publication all about animals that is up in the Pebble Beach area. But she was great. She was great. But then we met another Eastwood.
For this season?
For this season. It just aired. This was Clint's daughter, Allison Eastwood. That was his daughter from his first marriage, when he was married to Maggie Eastwood. And Allison is an animal activist.
One of those two little girls?
Yeah, but Allison looks a little different today.
Well, so does Clint.
I guess that's true. Anyway, Allison is behind an organization in Agora Hills called the Eastwood Ranch Foundation. And this is an organization that is focused on providing a shelter for dogs and for cats, and also a place where if there's a disaster, you could have a place to store your animals. They could be looked after. And it's under construction right now. She gave us a tour of it, still under construction.
In Agora Hills?
In Agora Hills.
So they probably have the similar problem that we have here, and we use Earl Warren.
Yes.
And so if there's a wildfire, a flood, or something,
they'll be there to help. And most of all, they're all very committed to the welfare of domestic pets. And anyway, Allison is great. She's been around animal lovers all her life. She grew up with rats. They had pet rats, which is funny to think about the Eastwoods with pet rats. But apparently they're brilliant and great pets. Not that, I'd not thought about having one as a pet, but I think people do, and probably be a good pet for a young kid. Children, a good way to start, hamster, gerbil, or maybe a rat. A nice little white
Make sure they're well fed.
Well, yeah, but they're very smart, But she was telling me that Clint has been down on the, I think it's the Warner lot for most of his career, and there's where his office is. There's a window that he leaves open, and squirrels come in from neighboring trees into his office, and they stand there waiting for nuts, and he has a whole drawer full of nuts that he hands to them and feeds them while he's
and he wonders why they come back.
Yeah, well, they're not nuts. They're pretty smart. So for the squirrels, he's made their day. Allison is great fun. She's I think what she's doing is wonderful. She's a great voice for animals, and that's important. You have, as I said earlier, having celebrities, having well-known voices out there talking about the benefit of good intention with animals is a good thing. Training kids when they're little, that's our most important thing. Children need to know because they have an inner appeal of animals, but they need to be trained as far as how to look after them, how to care for them, where the boundaries are. Yeah. And the more parents get involved with that, the better it will be for the animals in the future.
Well, it's very important. Again, you don't want me to tell the bad stories, but you've got to teach your child to not only a strange dog, but any dog, you don't reach toward its eyes, no. And how you approach it and are able to pet it with the owner's approval and with everybody watching. Yeah. There's a way to do it, and children need to be taught that way.
Yeah.
Same thing with horses.
Yeah.
It's only a certain way that you can properly deal with a horse.
Right.
And one of it is look them in the eyes. In this expansion of Animal Zone has been both locale, nature of the animals that are being helped, mm-hmm. wild and domestic, right. and type of animals. Now, I know you had a show, I think it was in the Inland Empire, that had something to do with mountain lions.
Maybe wolves.
Wolves, that's it.
Yeah.
I confuse these species.
Yeah, a little different, but yeah, we filmed at a wolf sanctuary out near Joshua Tree. And Tanya Little Wolf, who runs this sanctuary, who's an American Indian descendant.
Now, did she have the Little Wolf name, or did she take it before she did this?
I didn't look that deeply into it.
Okay.
But she looks like she's a little wolf.
Yeah.
And her father told her that her future was to be able to look after wolves. That was her destiny. and that's why they gave her the name Little Wolf.
Ah.
And she does have this great relationship with these wolves. I mean,
Holy cow.
you know, we were filming segments with the wolf sitting right there
hugging the
between us.
wolf. Yeah.
And the wolf is just, you know, rubbing up against her and rubbing up against me, and you realize what an amazing animal. They're like dogs, but big dogs with big teeth.
Yeah. So what's the strangest, and is a wolf the strangest misunderstood wild animal that you've dealt with?
I think wolves would definitely get a bad rap because you know, a lot of farmers don't like wolves because they are predators. They're an apex predator, and they try to wipe them out in certain states, certain communities. But they're reintroducing them like they did in the Yellowstone Park. And what's wonderful about this reintroduction of wolves is you see nature come back to balance, because without the wolves there, things started going haywire.
Again, I don't want to go to a negative aspect, but the state of Oregon had for years, a complete ban on taking wolves and shooting them.
Mm-hmm.
And a few years ago, they had to reverse that because they had identified a million wild wolves in Oregon. You know, the natural predator, unfortunately, for a wolf is the man. And I don't want to go there. But there was a reason to rebring the balance, because there's only so much that they can eat, so many other animals that they can take, and it was causing a real imbalance that government frequently does.
I think that's often a good lesson, is that the less we're involved with nature, probably the better it is for nature.
Yeah.
You know, because they seem to work things out pretty well.
Yeah. Any bear stories? You haven't got there yet?
I always wear clothes, so nothing bear.
I want you to do a story on the bears of Yosemite Valley.
Yeah.
You should go do that.
We've been watching bears and you know, trying to help people understand that bears shouldn't be fed. Bears, you should have if you're up in the mountains where there's bear territory, because they're there first. It's their land. You should make sure that your garbage is all locked and sealed up. Don't leave food in your car. All that would, you know, excite a bear to come and try and break in.
I have a history in Yosemite. My brother worked there, and the story is that, and you can go there today, and stupid people have left food out on their back seat of the car, window broken.
Sure. Bears are smart. They have a good sense of smell.
They come and take the bear, and they drive 50 miles up to Tioga and way up in the high country. And the story my brother always told is, by the time the rangers come back to the valley, they got another call. The same bear is back, because they come down the canyons.
Sure. Bears are very smart, and there's a great organization in Lake Tahoe called the Bear League, and they're involved primarily to help protect bears and help educate humans about how to not get bears into dangerous situations.
Yeah.
You know, because they're also a little bit like dogs if you look at them. You know, they've got that great snout that's got a wonderful sense of smell. You know, hundreds of times stronger than our sense of smell. I can only imagine what we're missing.
I've always been told, being in the wilderness many times, or the wildlands, bears and cougars, mountain lions, don't show them fear. Don't turn and try and run from them. You know, if you want to get out of it, keep looking right in their eyes and back up slowly and go away.
Yeah. Or make a lot of noise. Bears don't tend to like to be around humans, and especially when they're making noise. So they always say, bang some pots together, or you know, do something.
I've camped in Yosemite, and a bear coming through the camp, I didn't know. I just screamed, and they ran away.
We ran away. Sure. That's a good way. I mean, I live up part-time up in the Sequoias, and I've got bears coming around from time to time. One time I thought it was a large dog, and I was going outside looking. Well, it was around sunset, and then the next day I saw these big identifiers that it wasn't Bow Wow. It was a big bear that had been eating a lot of berries.
Yeah,
And of course, if you have fruit trees, that's like a dinner bell.
As some bad educators are finding in our school system, you don't mess with a mama bear, and
No.
you don't mess with a mama. If she's got a cub,
Yeah.
that's a different story.
That's right.
Well, we need to slip into your other show that started, and any last words on? I have come to the conclusion that the people you're talking about, they hire professionals like Wildlife Network, but they're built by volunteers and philanthropy. They don't just they don't come from the government, really.
No.
And they are probably one of the most successful enterprises that man has ever got involved in. And as I said, there's no government grant. Is it accurate to say that these are people who act, as some of us would say, a mega hobby, a very personal, part-time, free time, not their profession?
I mean, I think all these organizations have different structures and different people, but generally, the reason they exist. I mean, look at the National Disaster Search Dog Foundation down in Santa Paula. They found a great niche, and that was hyperactive dogs who would never make a good pet. They're just high-energy dogs, but they make a wonderful search and rescue dog. And so they set up an organization to train these dogs that they could then go out and
you've done a show on there.
We've done a number of times.
Search facility
it's
where
amazing.
they're being trained.
It's amazing what they're doing. And so, I think what happens is, thank goodness for the foundations, for the donors, for the volunteers, people who see the value of supporting these kind of groups, because that's what keeps them going.
Well, our producer, director in there, Michael, we're going to go now to the other show. And Arthur...
Someone asked me, what's cooking?
What's happening here now, Mohan?
So What's Cooking is a show that we did back a number of years ago for the local ABC affiliate here in Santa Barbara, KEYT. And it was produced by the Distant Fields for the first season, and then by Warren Butler for seasons 2 and 3. And
I think that's when I first really learned about it, because I knew you and Warren both.
Yeah.
In fact, you both had been on my shows.
Right. And What's Cooking was, the idea behind What's Cooking was, I wanted to do a cooking show that was all about area restaurants that were really good ones, and showing dishes that you could make at home that required very few ingredients and very few steps. So it was easy to follow. You could literally watch a cooking demonstration and then do it in your house. Well, that was the goal.
Well, we're going to have the intro up in a minute, Michael, but we will notice that just what you said. You're talking about the dishes and the menus, because several of the people here are no longer open as a restaurant. The proprietors or catering or chefs or
some of the proprietors have become mayors,
Yeah,
but,
right.
But the great thing is the cooking, the food is still the same.
Yeah.
The recipes are still the same, and that's the goal of the show.
And
even if the restaurants don't exist anymore, although many of them do, we really try and focus in on
Michael
good
started
dishes.
to bring it up while we were talking, and he was too courteous. Go ahead, just run over me, Michael, please.
So, Arthur, what's cooking?
Arthur von Wiesenberger has cooked and dined with some of the culinary greats, and the one thing he's learned is that simple good cooking can be spectacular.
Hey Arturo, what's cooking?
So join Arthur every Saturday night on KEYT to find frou-frou-free food that you can easily make at home.
Che cuciniamo, Arturo?
So let's go see what's cooking.
Show off. Oh, wait, no. In your introduction, you mentioned food that you can easily make at home.
That was
So-
that was the goal.
Yeah.
And really good cooking. Growing up in Italy, I found this was the case. It's very hard to get a bad meal in Italy, and the reason I think behind that is, number one, they always emphasize the quality of the ingredients. They're always fresh. Everything is straight off the vines. It's ripe. It's ready. It's not been preserved. It's not been stored for months before it ends up in the marketplace. This stuff is straight off the vine. You eat it
You
fresh.
mean the olives don't come in a jar at the supermarket?
Well, olives in a jar is a different thing, but I'm thinking more like tomatoes that are that ripe tomato that you bite into and it just is juicy like it should be, not dry or depressing. But anyway, because your ingredients are all fresh, you don't have to do a lot to them. In fact, the less you do to them, probably the better, because you want to bring out just the real flavors of those ingredients. So we were focused in on how to do simple dishes, something that you could do at home quickly, and dazzle your family and friends.
I think we may even have a clip of one that you can't afford to do at home.
Really?
You have to have a pig or a dog that finds it in the woods. And, truffle.
Yes, the fresh white truffles.
Yeah.
Well, that was, again, actually, now there's Randy Rouse, our mayor, who is we're at his restaurant, which is no longer the Paradise Cafe, but his dishes live on. He probably had one of the best cheeseburgers in town.
Yes.
And my favorite dish there, which we focused on this episode, was his swordfish tacos. They were the best dish. I remember Dennis Miller. Dennis almost cried when he heard the Paradise was closing because he loved their food.
Who's Dennis Miller?
He's another host just like you.
Yeah. Great comedian too.
He is a great comedian. But anyway, that was one of the great restaurants. Now, Molly's, who she's cooked for many people, including Oprah and Barack Obama and others. Kirk Douglas was a big fan of hers, as was Michael and Catherine and others. But Molly does really great, simple Italian cooking, and we show some of those dishes. Now, some of these dishes she accents with a little fresh white truffle, which is a very expensive addition, but it definitely gives a very exotic taste to things. She does it on pasta. She even does it on ice cream.
But the dishes are good without the truffle.
They are.
That's
Molly just could make almost anything taste great because she knows the techniques of making food become as flavorful as it can be, as simply as possible. And she now is doing catering, and she's doing private school cooking classes too.
Yeah. Now you've just gone through two restaurants, dishes that the restaurants are no longer owned by the same person.
Right.
I think we have another dish that you talk about.
Right. Well, this is at a wonderful Brazilian restaurant that was in town called the Brazil Arts Cafe, and Daniel, just a great chef. He makes traditional Brazilian dishes like pão de queijo, which is a bread that they make with cheese, a cheesy bread using a specific kind of flour for making this bread. And it's one of those popular appetizers in Brazil. I mean, you have this as a snack just when you're walking around. He also has a wonderful fish stew called muqueca. And it's a coconut-based stew with fish and chilies, and it comes from the Bahia area of Brazil. Delicious. I mean, in the wintertime, a cold winter dish would be perfect. It's like a fish stew, but like no fish stew I've ever had anywhere else. And it has certain spices that you can't find anywhere else except in Brazil. And he gets them from a Brazilian market in Los Angeles. Then there was another dish he did, which was an acai bowl, which was a great breakfast dish. And acai is a fruit that comes from the Amazon. It's supposed to be exceptionally healthy for you. He's also now doing catering. He's a great chef, Daniel.
You lived in, traveled Europe, and dealing with Brazilian food here, Hispanic food here. We could even go to Thai food. Is there an evolution? Are we stealing their recipes and everything from the European? Or how different are the foods that you experienced?
In the place where they're actually from?
Yeah.
Very different. I mean, less so these days, but a lot more a few centuries ago, a few decades ago. I remember coming first to Santa Barbara, and there were a few Italian restaurants, which were like Mom's Italian Village. You remember that place?
Oh yeah. I remember Mom.
You remember Mom? Yeah. There were a couple places like that. True Santa Barbara institutions, but what they were serving was what the Italians would call immigrant Italian food. They were dishes that were probably explained from overseas, but in that translation things got changed. Some dishes were different from what they are like in Italy.
Well, in the same block, at least the tradition of bocce ball was kept. How about Arnaldi's? Is it more Italian or more transitional?
I would say actually they have some Italian-inspired dishes, but I mean they're also known for their steaks, which is, I'd say, more American than anything else. I mean, the real authentic Italian food, I mean, what I would call regional Italian cuisine, arrived here probably back in the early 80s. The first place that I recall that really captured it, there were two restaurants. One was called Christian's, which was down near the Fig Tree. And then the other restaurant was Panivino in Montecito. Panivino, which is still there. They really brought in true Italian pastas, and ultimately when they opened up Via Vai, which was a pizzeria across the street, they brought in real Italian cooking. Things that you didn't used to find. I mean, remember, there was a time you couldn't even find an espresso in Santa Barbara. Of course, all that's changed now. But real Italian food, of course, now has blossomed. We've got such great chefs in this town, starting with Dario Furlati, who started Caudario on Victoria Street, and then he opened up a Caudario out in Goleta. He's got one on Coast Village Road. He's done incredibly well, and it serves truly authentic Italian food, very inspired
and
from...
price right.
Yes, very fair prices on it. Very fair prices and very good food. There's Tre Lune, which is another excellent Italian restaurant on Coast Village Road. Also very authentic and great quality food, one of Gene Montesano's restaurants. There's Olio Limone, which is on Victoria Street. Olio Limone is the restaurant that's owned by the Morello family, Alberto Morello and Elaine. And fantastic Italian food, very sophisticated Sicilian cooking. And they just opened a new restaurant down next to the Granada called Beta Mia. And that's more Sicilian seafood. So we are very fortunate now in Santa Barbara to have terrific, authentic food, as good as you find in Italy.
Tell me about the Sicilian seafood. I want to text Barry Capello and tell him
Oh, well, yeah, I mean, Sicilian seafood is the best because, of course, Sicily is all surrounded by water. And they have an enormous selection of different kinds of seafood. But they have certain dishes you wouldn't find elsewhere. And even Alberto brings in the ingredients from Sicily so the dishes really taste like they should.
I can't help it. You're going to hate me. When you go to the men's room, do you have to look and see if there's a gun strapped inside?
They're not those kind of Sicilians. But it's a great, that's another great restaurant. And then, of course, we have these wonderful ethnic restaurants like Japanese restaurants. Not only have our Japanese restaurants in Santa Barbara blossomed, they've created their own unique aspects like arigato. Arigato started, Bill Kaneko, who started arigato, used to be a sushi chef at Something's Fishy. You remember Something's Fishy in the Ottstown Mall years ago? So he was one of those guys that whenever you went to Something's Fishy, you try and sit in his section because he would make dishes that were so different from anybody else's. He was so creative with his rolls. He'd make certain combinations of sushi that was different from anybody else, and it just was the best. We'd always try and sit around Bill's place. Well, eventually Bill, I think, got the idea maybe he should open his own place, and he did. He opened up a little Arigato, which was in the Victoria Court, tiny little space, always packed. Always packed. And he invented, one of the things he came up with that was a huge success was the gold shot, which was in a little shot glass. He'd put some fresh sea urchin in the glass with some ponzu sauce, a quail egg, a little chili pepper, a little bit of sesame, and a little bit of, I think something green, maybe scallions or something. And you'd sit there and you'd say, cheers, and swallow this incredible combination of the butteriness of the sea urchin with the tartness of the ponzu sauce and the spice of the chili and the creaminess of the quail egg. And it was just like this symphony of flavors and sensations. The one danger with this particular thing was, A, you could do a lot of them pretty easily because they were so easy to consume. Second thing is they were kind of known as an aphrodisiac. So you want to make sure that you had your significant other having it with you.
I was always thought that was oysters on the half shell.
I think so too, yeah.
I can remember when I served on Earl Warren Showgrounds Board of Directors, we would go out once a month and our pay was to go to a nice restaurant. And the other guys would laugh at me when I had ordered 3 orders of 12 oysters on the half shell while they were eating steaks and other things. And I said, well, I have a wife to go home to.
And we have our own local oysters now from the Hope Ranch area. They harvest oysters from there, and they're delicious. We're very lucky about fresh oysters and shellfish.
A seafood that I used to get where Lucky's is, at the Pier Pond Inn in Ventura, and they even were a monument to them out on Highway 101, and that's abalone.
Oh, yes.
What's happened to abalone?
Well, the good news is there's farmed abalone now that you can get that comes from Dos Pueblos Ranch, just north of Bacara. And
so that and oysters are both farmed right off our coast.
Yeah, well, the oysters are actually in the ocean. The abalone, I think they have them growing inside tanks. I'm not sure because I haven't been out there, but they're small, little pink and red abalones, but they're perfectly delicious. And some restaurants, like Lucky's, for example, has a great abalone appetizer where they serve it with kind of a Meunier sauce, and they're just wonderful. I remember years ago when you could get wild abalone before it was
abalone steaks and
but then
some
it became
pasta, $5.
Well, yeah, that was back in the olden days.
1960. Yeah.
Okay, but you remember the Casa de Sevilla? Butch would always have abalone on his menu, and it was about $50, but it was spectacular, and it was a big abalone that was available when you could still harvest them.
I know several friends who had been abalone divers, and would do that. And then, of course, Lad Handelman was, and it was a hobby, pastime, and business here for years.
Oh. But then we started running out of them. That became an endangered animal. So.
Yeah. Well,
they had to stop the harvesting. But, the farmed abalone is wonderful.
Well, part of the abalone loss, at least north of Point Conception, and it was the otters.
Yeah, they like abalone. Yeah, it's part of their menu.
Yeah, and they could. People didn't realize they could eat, I think it was 5 times their weight each day in whatever they were eating. Yeah. They're just terrible garbage animals that I know you'll rescue.
I love otters, and they're
people
wonderful.
Stand at the.
Do you know that otters have the thickest fur of any mammal? because it's cold.
Yeah, we used to make coats out of it.
Yeah.
And hats.
Terrible.
And I'd go to the Monterey aquarium with my kids, and I'd say, "Those are terrible animals killing." They have
Teaching your kids the wrong stuff. Bad boy.
But
No,
truth.
no, we love otters, and most, and the nice thing is there's hopefully everybody can share.
Yeah.
But I think if
They didn't share much. That was their problem.
well, they're not as much in our market as, they're more a little further north of us.
Yeah, I guess
Up in Monterey is where
they've
they are.
traveled down to
Point Conception, that area.
our
Yeah.
Channel Islands.
Well, yeah, but who goes out there? If you go out there, you're going to be on the sharks menu.
Well, we've got a couple of minutes.
Yes, sir.
Again, review names of the show, some upcoming features, and how people find them.
Right. So as far as Animal Zone goes, coming up this next week is going to be a great episode starring Carrie Burns, who's the CEO of Santa Barbara Humane. And Carrie talks about dog breeding and the different type of breeders that are out there, from the good breeders to the puppy mills that are not so good, and the problems with overbreeding and what happens, health issues that happen with certain animals. Because as you may have seen in the Santa Barbara News Press a few months ago, we had a story about Norway banning certain breeds of dogs because the overbreeding was creating all these health issues with those breeds, and they just felt it was not right to do that. So she talks about that, and then we actually transition with her from Santa Barbara to Orlando, to the Pet Alliance of Orlando, which is what she was the CEO of before she came to Santa Barbara. And we see what they've done out in Orlando, the differences that exist out there, the kinds of illnesses they have to deal with. It's like they have more heartworm out there, for example. And then we're going to have in that same episode, we've got some great people in Miami who are doing teaching veterinarian sciences at high school level.
Great.
And having these high schoolers working with animals. They have dogs and cats and all kinds of rescues.
What we need more people not being chased off to a 4-year college and then big debt. How about what's cooking?
What's cooking? I think right now we're going to have Paradise Cafe coming up with Randy Rouse and Jose Lopez, who's a chef there, and some great dishes that you can do at home.
Something I can make at home.
Easy. Cheeseburger.
Yeah, I'm all for it. Well, Arthur, thank you. I enjoy it every time.
Always a pleasure, Jim. Let's go get a bite.
You know I'm one of your biggest fans.
And I'm yours.
Thank you.
We'll see you on Worthen 101.
Right.
Thanks.